It seems my husband has become possessed by a demon.
This house will go to Susan. If you resist, it's a divorce.
He's giving the house that I bought in my name to our eldest son's wife.
Old hag, get out soon.
A daughter-in-law who has won over my husband.
It's going to be in my name, ha ha ha. I can pay for a loan of $1,500.
My eldest son is on their side too. Well, I don't have any attachment to this filthy house anymore. Then I'll leave. I'm going to send you 3 to help from now on. Prepare yourselves. I am Kate, 60 years old. I work for a major company and hold what's called an executive position. I live with my husband Tom, who is 2 years younger than me. We renovated our house last year for our future. Our house was built by my father and is quite old. Because of that, it was quite worn out, and we wanted to make it comfortable for our old age. But considering our age, the loan is a bit high at $1,500. Nevertheless, it's not an amount we can't afford, and since I'm an executive at a major company, I was told that the loan would be approved. By the way, Tom is the manager of a restaurant at a small to medium-sized company, but because his income is less than mine, it seems that it's easier for my loan to be approved.
It's tough to keep paying with my income. It was originally your father's house, and now it's under your name. Could you please pay the full amount? In return, I will give you more living expenses than before.
So we had a discussion and decided to renovate. Our home, now beautiful and comfortable, was unrecognizable. It made me truly happy to know that we could continue living in the house where we had spent our childhood, transformed by renovation. But I never thought the day would come when I would have to leave the house. One day, my cell phone vibrated.
I'm getting married.
That's what my eldest son Mike said on the phone. Mike, 31 years old, is a section chief at a major company. He has always been serious, devoting himself to study and club activities. He's very enthusiastic about his work, even after becoming a working adult. I had never heard of him having a girlfriend. I was very interested in the woman he was considering marrying. I wonder what kind of woman she is. It must be a fantastic woman since Mike fell in love with her. But I can't help but worry if she is taking advantage of Mike's lack of romantic experience for some ulterior motive. As a mother, I felt an equal amount of excitement and anxiety about the woman who would be coming into our son's life. And then the day of our first meeting arrived. A ladylike woman with brown hair and wearing a white chiffon dress entered our home.
Hello, my name is Susan.
Her manners were impeccable, and she had an aura of purity about her. Her first impression was quite good.
Nice to meet you, Father and Mother.
She showed her beautiful white teeth as she smiled at us. We can entrust Mike to her. Seeing her, both my husband, Tom, and I thought she was a good match for our son.
She seems like a good girl.
When Tom whispered,
I'm very happy to hear you say that, Father. Let's get along well from now on.
As she said this, she held Tom's hand and looked into his eyes.
What? What is she doing?
I was taken aback by her overly familiar behavior. Mike seemed surprised as well, but Tom just stood there, surprised, but not displeased. I wasn't exactly jealous, but it wasn't a pleasant feeling. What are you doing? I felt that such behavior was inappropriate, so I asked Susan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep my boundaries on our first meeting. I'm really sorry.
She quickly let go of Tom's hand and apologized.
People often tell me that my sense of personal distance is strange. I don't mean any harm, but I often overstep boundaries. I'm really sorry.
It seemed like she wasn't a bad person. Although I was shocked by her behavior because it contradicted my first impression of her, it was clear that Mike was smitten with her. In the previous action,
That's true. Susan often doesn't understand personal boundaries, but I think that's one of her good points. She's the one who helped me overcome my shyness with women, and because of that, we're now able to consider getting married.
Our introverted son had changed so much because of Susan's influence. Please, look after Mike. Despite her quirk, it was clear she was a good person. I accepted their marriage. Things moved quickly and they were officially registered as a married couple a few weeks later. I prayed for their happiness from the bottom of my heart. Half a year after their marriage, something unexpected happened. I'm home. Huh? When I returned from work, I saw a pair of women's shoes at the entrance. In the living room, I found Susan.
Oh, mother-in-law, welcome back.
There were empty cans and bottles of alcohol on the table. It seemed they had been drinking. What's this? I was puzzled as to why they would have a drinking party without Mike. Curious, I asked.
Well, when I was about to return from work, I ran into Susan. She said she wanted to get to know me better, so we decided to have a drink. But since it's just before payday, I figured we'd be better off drinking at home.
Why would they have a drinking party at home? If you're going to drink together, it would be better if Mike was there too. It might be a bit of an inconvenience for the newlyweds, but you could have had drinks at Mike and Susan's place instead, I say, tilting my head in confusion.
Well, we could have done it at our place, but isn't this house super clean and nice? Plus, our place is a mess right now.
Susan, whose speech was usually composed, is slurring her words. It's a surprise, considering she has been drinking. But why are they drinking together? Why didn't you invite Mike? It seems odd for a daughter-in-law to come to her in-law's house to drink, especially without her husband, who is newlywed. I have been looking for Mike ever since I saw them.
He is working overtime because it's the busiest time of the year for him. I've been so lonely.
Susan starts to cry as she says this.
It's okay, Susan. It's not your fault. The one who's wrong is Mike for leaving you alone even though you just got married.
Tom starts patting her on the head as he says this.
Wah, Daddy.
What is this situation? It's creepy. Hey, Tom, Susan is Mike's wife, right? It's not nice of you to do this to her. It's not fair to Mike. I reprimand Tom for his inappropriate behavior. And then,
don't scold Daddy.
Susan defends Tom. What? I was so surprised by the absurdity that I blurted it out. I had a lot to say, but I was too tired from work to deal with it all. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up later. I sighed and fled to the bathroom, then called Mike to explain the situation. He agreed to interrupt his work and come to pick her up immediately. To me, Susan seems like a peculiar girl, but Mike must truly love her if he's going out of his way to pick her up despite being busy. I suspect that their married life may prove to be a bit of a challenge. I might turn into a disagreeable mother-in-law, but I've decided to offer some advice about their future married life once Mike arrives. Time flew by while I was pondering all this in the bath. When I headed to the living room, feeling a bit lightheaded from the heat, I found Mike had come to pick up Susan, but for some reason he was drinking even though he had driven here. Mike, you did drive here, right? Have you been drinking? When I asked, he answered in a drunken and cheerful manner.
Susan wanted me to drink, so I just went with it. So I've decided to stay over tonight.
I'm happy that my son will be staying over, but his bride-to-be, who has left a bad impression on me, is staying over too, and quite suddenly at that. Huh. To be honest, I was perplexed, but Mike has already had alcohol. I can drive you guys. I didn't want the bride to stay. Even though I was tired, I offered to drive them home, but...
No way. That wouldn't be right. You must be tired too. Why don't you join us for a drink instead?
Mike with his carefree smile. I didn't say anything further. Huh? At that moment, I felt something was off. Suddenly, Susan smirked. It was as if she was taking pleasure in my confusion. It must be my imagination, right? I tried to convince myself it was a misunderstanding, but unbeknownst to me, her tremendously dangerous plan had already begun. The next day, Susan repeatedly apologized for her blunder.
I'm really sorry,
she said as she left. I felt completely drained, like a storm had just passed. Then, when I returned home that day, Susan was there again, but there was no sign of Mike. I felt despair, but the situation seemed different from yesterday.
I'm sorry for intruding again, but I really wanted to apologize,
she said, offering me some sweets.
I also went overboard. My bad.
Tom seemed remorseful too. Although it upset me, it seemed like they were genuinely sorry. I decided to let it slide this time. I forgave them.
Thank you.
Susan seemed quite embarrassed about what happened and stopped visiting. To be honest, I didn't want to get involved much either, so I was grateful for this development. Then one day, Tom came over with a serious look on his face.
There's something I want to talk about,
he said. As I was wondering what it could be, Mike and Susan showed up at our house. It's been a while, I greeted them, but for some reason they ignored me. Did they not hear me? Just as I was beginning to wonder, Tom suddenly shouted out loud.
I'm giving this house to Susan. If you oppose, we'll get a divorce.
What? What kind of nonsense is he spouting? Giving the house to Susan? I don't understand. As I stood there stunned, Susan said,
Mother-in-law, please leave.
What? What does this mean? I am confused. Wait a minute. What do you mean you're giving the house to Susan? I asked Tom, and he answered.
You've been harassing Susan all this time, haven't you? How dare you?
Harassing her? That's a baseless accusation. That's absolutely not true. But he wouldn't listen to my protests.
Shut up, she told me. That's why she was crying and couldn't come over.
Tom kept yelling and Susan was crying. Why is this happening? Then Mike seemed to join in as if to help them.
I can't believe you would do something like that, Mom. That's really low.
The more I denied it, the angrier the two men became, and Susan just cried more.
That's why I'm divorcing you. Get out right now. I'm going to keep living here with the two of them.
Why do I have to give my house to Susan? When I asked.
Because Susan is deeply hurt. I suppose we could have asked for division of property, but I thought of a better idea. I'm going to take this precious house of yours and give it to her. That should give you an appropriate sense of loss.
Even though I'm not bullying, why do I have to be the one causing damage? It's unreasonable to think that Susan, who quit her job when we got married, can afford to pay a loan of $1,500. When I said that,
don't worry, we'll put it in Mike's name. If it's his salary and place of work, we can change the name right away.
Even so, it should be difficult to change the name if a loan is involved. If changing a loan was that easy, anyone could buy a house. I don't think the bank will approve. When I said that, Tom responded,
You work for a big company and so does Mike, so it should be fine. Besides, I have a friend who works at the bank where you have your loan. I'm sure it'll be fine if we consult him.
Where does that confidence come from, I wonder?
That's right. A loan of $1,500 is nothing.
Mike, full of confidence after Tom's words. It seems like it's becoming more likely that I will have to give up my house. I've said it many times, but I'm not bullying, so I absolutely won't give up the house. When I argue, the two get angry again. Oh, this is so tiresome. While I was getting fed up, Susan, who had been crying all this while, spoke up.
Mother-in-law, for the sake of our child, please.
Susan pleading as she strokes her stomach. Could it be?
Mom, Susan is pregnant. If she continues to be mentally unstable, she might have a miscarriage. So, please give in.
I am being informed of the pregnancy here. Certainly, stress is a great enemy during pregnancy, but to be forced to give up my house over a baseless accusation? I am left feeling frustrated. Let me be alone for a while. I left the room and went to the bedroom. Bullying? What is that? Could it be that I've done something terrible to Susan without realizing it? As I was worrying and lying down on the bed, what's this? There was brown hair on the bed. Tom's and my hair color is black. It's impossible for brown hair to be there. Is this a sign of infidelity? After the quarrel earlier, another terrible truth has come to light. My head is about to explode. I don't know what's what anymore. I fell asleep crying, and when I woke up it was night. As I tried to enter the living room, I heard voices. It seems that Mike and Susan haven't returned yet.
I wanted to drink too.
Susan, you can't because you're pregnant.
Tom and Susan are having a great time. There's no room for me to join them. I'm depressed because of Susan's mysterious accusations. As I couldn't enter the living room, suddenly I heard a strange sound.
Ah, Susan, I love you.
Oh, Tom, you... Mike and my mother-in-law will find out, won't they?
What? What are Tom and Susan doing? What on earth is going on?
Don't worry, Mike's out cold from all the drinking. Plus, Kate has been in her room the whole time. She must be asleep by now.
Is she sulking in her sleep? Hilarious!
That brown hair probably belongs to Susan. It's disgusting. What were they doing in the bed I was sleeping in just a while ago? They must be planning to have fun with Susan while hiding from Mike after they kicked me out. My house being used for an affair. Fine, I'll give up this disgusting house, but remember this. The next morning, I pretend to have slept in the bedroom and put on a nonchalant face in front of the three of them, even though I don't want to sleep in that bed anymore and couldn't get any sleep, because I was so shocked.
Are you finally going to give us the house?
When I said I had decided to hand over the house, everyone smiled.
All right, let's go change the name on the property deed then. I'm sure I'll pass the loan review right away.
Mike, excited. He probably doesn't know anything. It made me sad, but I won't tell the truth to a son who doesn't listen to his mother and is being controlled by his wife. Not yet. Then the hectic days of divorce proceedings and name changes followed. It was very tough, but somehow the name change was completed.
From today, it's no longer your house,
Tom sneered.
Get out already, old lady.
Susan whispered in my ear. I was pretty annoyed. I'm leaving without being told. I'm letting go of the house I've lived in since birth. It was sad, but it's also the place where the affair happened. I have no regrets. And I'm going to stir up the weird relationship between these three. Just watch. 1 month after I left, finally I'm ready. I went to my former house. When I rang the doorbell,
what does a stranger want?
Tom, raging after such a long time. I have something to discuss. Can you let me in? I say it strongly.
Why do I have to let you into my house?
Tom refuses to let me in. I have something very important to talk about. It's important for Susan too.
Something important for Susan?
He let me into the house easily when I mentioned her name. To be honest, I didn't want to say her name because it made me feel sick. But I knew he was weak for her, so I mentioned her name.
A stranger's here.
A stranger? Well, we did divorce, so maybe we are strangers, but he didn't have to say it like that. I was irritated by Tom's response.
What do you want now?
The three of them are extremely wary. They need to see this.
Huh?
I laid out the photos.
What is this?
The photos showed Tom and her on a date. In fact, I had hired a detective to follow them after our divorce. As a result, I got pictures of them on a date.
Wait a moment. Huh? What?
Mike is flustered. Then,
what is the meaning of this photo? We are just a close daughter-in-law and father-in-law. Nothing more and nothing less.
Yes. What do you want to accomplish by taking such an inexplicable photo?
Then what is this? I pull out my smartphone and play an audio recording.
Because I really love you, Susan.
Hey, if you speak so loudly, Mike and my mother-in-law will wake up.
It's the voices of Tom and her, along with some suspicious noises.
What?
On the day I found out about their relationship, I had recorded their exchange.
No, it's a misunderstanding.
Tom desperately tries to explain.
Misunderstanding? This is clearly over the line.
As expected, Mike is furious. She is hanging her head low. I pour more oil onto the fire. By the way, whose child is it in your belly? Tom's face instantly turns pale.
You don't mean with my dad?
No, my father-in-law was on birth control. Oh.
She dug her own grave.
You admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it, didn't you?
The three of them yell, and Tom and Mike grapple with each other.
Ouch!
It seems that her belly tightened from the argument, and the fight is interrupted. Then I seize the opportunity and say, I've always said it, haven't I, that I wasn't bullying Susan. Maybe you were lying just to get rid of me, so that you could convince Mike? Mike is taken aback.
You're kidding. What the hell? You guys and... I can't believe I didn't trust my mother.
Mike seems to be blaming himself for listening to the villainous woman and not believing his own mother.
Since I found out, just tell me everything.
Mike yells at the two of them. They were hesitant to talk, but...
There's so much evidence. Do you want to go to court?
The word court gets them talking. Apparently at first she loved Mike, but when they came to our house for the wedding greeting, she saw our newly renovated and beautiful house and wanted it.
My home is quite dilapidated, and I was jealous of this beautiful house, and I thought the inside was also quite nice.
She explains while crying. Wanting the house, she decided to get close to Tom on the day of the wedding greeting. She deliberately ambushed Tom on his way home from work and drank alcohol at home without inviting Mike. She seems to have nurtured her love with Tom for several months and planned to kick me out. If that's the case, you should have proposed living together from the start. When I said that, she paused and then answered.
I don't have a good image of a mother-in-law. My mother and grandmother at home are always fighting. My grandmother was bullying my mother, so I didn't want to live with a mother-in-law. To live comfortably in a beautiful house, I thought I had no choice but to get you to leave.
Indeed, with such an image, she wouldn't want to live with a mother-in-law. But to be in love with her actual father-in-law? What did Mike think about this?
I knew I was being used, but when she came to greet us, shook my hand, and smiled at me, I was already...
Even though he knew he was being used, Tom, who had fallen in love, seems to have done this to discard me and keep her by his side.
You guys are the worst!
When Mike said that, the two of them began to plead and cried. After that, Mike, of course, divorced. When they checked the DNA of the child, who was born just in case, it turned out to be Tom's child.
I won't pay child support.
Saying that, Mike demanded division of property from the two. Of course, so did I.
I never thought I'd have to demand division of property from my own father.
I patted on Mike's head as he sighed heavily. We were driven crazy by a foolish woman. But the woman who will ruin her life more than us will probably regret it forever from now on. And my hunch was right. 2 years have passed since then. She remarried Tom and decided to never divorce but to stay together forever. She said it was for the sake of their child, and she put the child she gave birth to in daycare so she could work.
So today, the old man, your papa came to pick you up.
Apparently she's been looked down on by the other moms at the daycare. The children seem to be getting along well, but she's full of sadness because she can't make any mom friends. Moreover, when she explained to her own parents about the divorce and remarriage with Tom, they were furious, and all the anger was directed at Tom. They are now estranged. It's all her own doing. By the way, Mike is living alone in that house.
I wanted to sell it, but that would be too cruel to my mother. After all, this is the house where my mother lived since she was born, isn't it? I can't sell a house full of memories like that.
I told him it was creepy and he could sell it, but he said he was so full of guilt that he couldn't. And perhaps because I kept saying that house is creepy, he hired a house cleaning service and threw away all of Tom and her belongings. Mike, who did all that for me, said,
Even though it was because of that woman, I did something horrible to my mother. You probably won't forgive me, but please meet me on a whim, come to my house, and let me honor you.
And he gave me a gift of vacation tickets. He is truly remorseful. I can't forgive him yet, but I think I'll try to work hard to return to our original parent-child relationship.